hosted by, I believe the name was Steelers Gang. So I have some mints in my mouth. They'll be gone shortly. I want to thank you all for the sweet and kind comments on my 1,000 subscriber Q&A video. Got lots of congratulations from you guys, and I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. So thank you very much. If you're new here, welcome. Please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, all of those things to support our little community that we have going on here. So let's get right into today's case. Today's case is coined The Lost Boys of Bucks County. This case absolutely shook this small community in Pennsylvania. Violent crime really wasn't known there at all. So my heart goes out to the victims and their families and their communities as always. So this case kind of takes place in Bucks County, and at the end of the video I'll show you some pictures of the victims and the perpetrator, and on the map, like where this is. In Salisbury, Pennsylvania, in 2017, 4 young men were reported missing between July 5th and July 7th, 2017. So this is about 30 miles north of Philadelphia, I believe, as well. The missing men were Jimmy Patrick, who was 19 years old, Dean Finocchiaro, who was 19, Mark Sturgis, who was 22, and Tom Mio, who was 21. Patrick was the first of the young men to go missing. He was living with his grandparents at the time, and he was a rising sophomore, so it was the summer before his sophomore year at Loyola College in Baltimore, Maryland. I believe it's in Baltimore. Well, we'll just say it's in Maryland. He was studying business there, and he was on a full scholarship, a full ride. The university president stated that he was on a path for success. He had done really well his freshman year, scene around 6:30 p.m. on July 7th, and he was picked up by an unidentified car on that day. He had also agreed to buy marijuana from DiNardo. And like I said before, DiNardo claimed that the two were really close, that they were friends. Mio was described as an easygoing and friendly young man who was from Plumstead, Pennsylvania. He was really good friends with one of the other men, Sturgis. They worked together and they were known as like good kids growing up, and they were hard workers. Sturgis was a talented guitar player and athlete, and his father described him as very intelligent, a good worker, a good brother, and a good son. The night of July 7th, Mark told his father that he was going to meet up with Tom Mio and that they would be ready for their construction jobs in the morning. The two met up around 6 p.m. And then went on to meet DiNardo at a nearby church so Mio could buy some marijuana. When the four young men didn't return home or show up to work the next day, very 6